Right, I'm just going to share my screen. There we are. Hello, and welcome to Stacks, Cliffs and Cauldrons, a talk by me, Toby Driver, about some recent survey work we've been doing on the Castle Martin training area in Pembrokeshire. I work with the Royal Commission on the Ancient and Historical Monuments of Wales, based in Aberystwyth. I also work on the CHERISH Climate Change and Coastal Heritage Project with my colleagues Louise Barker and Dan Hunt. And the title of the talk conveys something of the spectacular coastal scenery we've been lucky enough to work in amongst this summer. So over the next half an hour or so, I'll tell you about some of the new survey work we've been doing in August this year, looking at 5 coastal promontory forts in the South Pembrokeshire coastal cliffs and the Carboniferous limestone scenery of the Castle Martin training area. And we'll look at how the CHERISH project is approaching the recording of these incredible sites, but also how it's tackling issues of climate change and coastal erosion. You'll see 4 of the 5 sites here. One of the most famous amongst them, Flimston Bay Promontory Fort, upper left. Then we have Croxy Dam near Flimston in the centre. Lower left, Buckspool or the Castle in the east of the range near Govan's Head. And then Linney, lower right, Linney Head Promontory Fort, right out in the west of the Castle Martin training area near Freshwater West Beach. And there on the right is my colleague Louise doing some surveying this summer. Over the summer period, we surveyed nearly 3 kilometres of coast with drone photogrammetry, recording over 3,000 new images so that we can pop up new 3D surveys and 3D models of these sites, and also carried out new topographic surveys of these promontory faults. So I work on the CHERISH Climate Change and Coastal Heritage project, begun in 2017, running for 6 years until 2022, and we've just had an extension until 2023 as well. And we can see here the 4 partners, the Royal Commission, ourselves on the right there, working with Aberystwyth University, Geography and Earth Sciences, and our colleagues in Ireland, the Discovery Programme, and the Geological Survey of Ireland. So it's an Ireland Wales project with 4 main driving themes you can see there on the left. We're looking to reconstruct past environments and weather history. We're looking to discover and map and monitor heritage on the coast edge and also under the sea. And then the lower 2, the ones that we're more concerned about here with the Castle Martin survey, the need to raise awareness about knowledge and data gaps. Knowledge is often poor in the very coast edge, these more remote rural parts of the Irish and Welsh coastlines. This is where a lot of the work we need to focus. And we're also particularly establishing new and accurate methods of recording the coast edge. Previously, really good topographic data, cartographic data has been lacking in these remote parts of the Welsh coastline. And we're improving that now with better recording to help us monitor cliff loss and change into the future. Within the CHERISH project, we've really developed a toolkit approach to prospecting for and surveying archaeology. So we're trying to hit the coast edge and the inshore waters with everything that we've got. And this spring, we had a brand new graphic done of our toolkit approach here by Caris Tate, an illustrator. And it really sums up the way that we're tackling the coast edge of West Wales and Eastern and Southern Ireland. And we're actually employing all these techniques you can see in the diagram, from number 1, airborne LiDAR survey, airborne laser scanning, number 2, drone survey, number 4, aerial survey, which is my day job at the Royal Commission. Down to number 11, we've been doing some offshore survey, or the Geological Survey of Ireland has been surveying the inshore waters of Wales this summer. What we're looking at on the cliff edge there, the rope access, number 7, the topographic survey, number 5, the geophysical survey. These are all techniques we're combining in the coast edge of Wales, particularly the laser scanning, the drone photogrammetry for the Castle Martin region. Now, Pembrokeshire is famous for its coastal promontory forts, even back to Lawes's quote in 1880 there about these wonderful coast edge with these windswept promontory forts around it. And we have around 60 coastal promontory forts around the coast of Pembrokeshire. And on the left, we can see one of our project maps from the CHERISH project of our key baseline study sites in Wales. And you can see we're surveying quite a few coastal promontory forts around the coast. Up in the north, Diwrnod Archaeoleg, and then midway down, number 8, Castell Bach and Ceredigion. And then in Pembrokeshire itself, Penrhynnau or caerau promontory fort near St David's, where we should have had a excavation this summer, but was put off due to COVID. And we can see right at the bottom, number 13, Flimston Bay promontory fort. So these are our baseline study sites, where we're doing the most work to monitor erosion and fix baseline recording for the future. Now let's go back to prehistory for some of these sites. Let's consider Pembrokeshire's role in these busy international seaways which existed long before the Romans came to Britain. And we can see this yellow line demarcating what I call the Celtic Sea Archipelago. These are regions of southwest Britain and Ireland where promontory forts, coastal promontory forts, were really a way of life. In Wexford and Waterford, Southern Ireland, Pembrokeshire in Wales, and then Cornwall, of course, as well, we have a profusion of coastal settlements. And now we know back as far as 325 BC, we had Greek navigators like Pytheas sailing up for the Mediterranean, circumnavigating Britain, talking about the Cornish tin trade, talking about trading and meeting with locals in Wales and the Isle of Man and Scotland as well. So these coastlines have been well traveled and well visited for millennia. And we can see the quote, you can read it as I talk, from Strabo from 7 BC, drawing upon some of these earlier Greek and Roman navigators, talking about the products that Britain has, the grain, the cattle, the gold, the silver, and the iron. And you can be sure that Pembrokeshire would have been a very important and well-visited place. 300 BC, 200 BC, 100 BC, long time ago, it would have been well connected with the wider maritime world. Closer to the present day, we have problems of erosion at some of these coastal promontory forts, particularly on the limestone, where we can have many years of stability, but then spectacular collapses. And here we can see a large cliff fall at Flimston Bay promontory fort. It happened around 2014. You can see lower right, Mae'r photograph in 2014, showing this fresh cliff fall on the isthmus at Flimston Bay, losing about 5 meters of coastline. And more recently, upper right, we've had quite a lot of erosion on the footpath entering Flimston Bay promontory fort. Caerau and the National Park have erected fences now to try and prevent people walking there. But these are quite fragile sites. And we saw, of course, in Storm Ophelia in 2017, the collapse of part of the Green Bridge of Wales as well, that great natural arch down here. So wind and rain and storms are taking their toll on these exposed promontory forts. There's plenty of work to do and plenty of things that we can do with modern archaeological survey on these coastal sites. And everybody talks about doing drone surveys nowadays, which is part of the work that's really central to our new surveys. You see Dan in the photograph here. Dan and myself are qualified drone pilots for the CHERISH project in Wales. But it's not just a case of going out and flying a drone in the coast of Pembrokeshire. We have to abide by the law and the regulations. We have a new drone users code of practice in Pembrokeshire. And all the way through the year, we must be mindful of nesting birds in the cliffs. During the summer months, spring and summer months, we have the choughs there on the bottom of the picture. And then from August and September onwards, we can have pupping seals in some of these secluded Pembrokeshire coves. So we work very closely with Natural Resources Wales, the National Park to get clearance for our drone service before we go ahead. But the results can be spectacular. Here we have caerau promontory fort near St David's in a new 3D model that Dan's launched on Sketchfab, and you can find that on our CHERISH Sketchfab account. It's also not just CHERISH working in the coast edge in Pembrokeshire. There's lots of other people working in the coast edge, and particularly last year, or the year before, 2019, the Diwrnod Archaeological Trust was excavating again at Pentyrrau promontory fort near Solva, the next fort along from caerau. They had some great results from that first years of new excavations on the entrance passageway. You can see a photograph of the entrance passageway under excavation there. And then we have CHERISH working with the Dyfed Trust on a new drone survey of Pentyrrau. You can see our sketch-fab model, the Fromage Fort there, and a new topographic survey of the earthworks as well. So this is a complex, monumental promontory fort, and there's so much coming up from the interior to show us how people lived here in pre-Roman times. So turning to the subject of the talk and the promontory forts of the Castle Martin Peninsula, back in August, the very first piece of field work the Royal Commission did since lockdown started in March was this piece of work at the promontory forts of the Castle Martin range. We have a brief window of opportunity on this live firing range in August to do field work. Particularly Linney Head out there on the west is in the live firing area, not normally open at any time of year. And then running down the south coast, we have Flimston Bay, Croxy Dam, a new promontory fort at Crickmile Down, and then Buckspool, the castle. So we can see these promontory forts on the south coast. And these were the focus of our week's recording project to really get those baselines in place. Out in the far west first, we start with Linney Head Camp, way out on its own really, just around the corner from Freshwater West. A very interesting promontory fort with massive banks, about 3 to 4 meters tall in places, cutting off the promontory. And upper right, you can see an air photograph of the promontory enclosure. The next promontory on from Linney Head has this tiny little enclosure on it. And it seems to be common of the sort of pairing of these coastal sites we have around the Pembrokeshire coast. As it's in the live firing area, Linney Head is covered in rounds of dummy and live ammunition. You can see a tank shell in the middle photograph there. And this is why we have to have stringent controls with the military, proper briefings, and they even come out and see what we're doing sometimes. There's Stephen in 2018 coming to see us on our survey of Linney Head then. So it's an interesting and dynamic environment to be working in. Now, back in 2009, my colleague Louise Barker did a big topographic survey of Linney Head. This is providing a great comparison for the work we're doing now. It seems to have a number of phases. Number one there on the plan, you can see an inner enclosure, an earlier enclosure on the very bluff of the promontory. The next phase seems to be phase two, the construction of these great ramparts across the promontory with a main gateway, which at number three was augmented with a new hallmark, a walled bastion to protect this gateway, and then new outer ramparts as well. And you can see a photograph of the walling on that hallmark in the middle photograph on the right. Number four, and photograph lower right, is this weird crossbank. This cuts across the phase two and phase three ramparts and suggests potentially a response to cliff collapse. Just at number four is where the cliff edge is eroding, and this rampart cuts across and sort of provides a new end to the promontory fort. And it may be that in the face of collapsing ramparts, that the Iron Age builders built this new crossbank to protect the interior of the fort. Maybe an early response to climate change. So we're out this summer. This is my colleague Dan flying the drone, doing photogrammetric recording of the slice through the ramparts we have at Linney. You can see on the top, the upper rampart is cut through dramatically, and then dropping down, lower down, you have a cross section of the rock cut ditch. You actually see the infill of the rock cut ditch there, lower down. So we have a rare chance to get a cross section of an Iron Age defence without even excavating it. So we're doing a detailed photogrammetric model of that at Linney Head and improving our record of the whole promontory fort. During that week in August, we also did our first proper visit to Buckspool Camp, also known as the Castle, down near St Govan's Head. Now, Buckspool, a very fine promontory fort from the air, but less visible, quite inconspicuous at ground level. From the air, we can see the defences there. On the outer side, we have this characteristic hook, this D-shaped outer rampart, and then two inner ramparts. And then the blowhole at the isthmus there has destroyed part of the main gate, we think, of Buckspool. Within the fort, we have a cluster of these rock-cut house platforms, these dimples in the fort interior. Very impressive sight with sheer cliffs dropping to the sea all around. The middle photograph on the right shows a section of this rock-cut ditch at Buckspool, and that's so fresh. It's 2,000 years old. And it's still surviving very, very well. And we think there's traces potentially even of a medieval settlement incorporated in the ramparts at Buckspool. It's a complex site. We're looking at survival. The walling at Buckspool is still very fresh in places. This is prehistoric rampart walling made out of limestone blocks. But look how well it's preserved. It gives us a tangible look at the quality of the entrance ramparts here, as they would have been in the Iron Age. And using our drone, we can take a little fly over Buckspool. We have the outer ramparts in the foreground, and we're coming over. There's Louise working on the inner rampart with that walling surviving there. Just see a figure there. And then lower left, we have the blowhole, which has partly destroyed some of the main gate. And then we're into the interior of the promontory fort. You can see white crosses on the ground so that we can locate our drone surveys later on. And then there's a figure there, that's Dan doing a survey of one of the rock-cut house platforms, working out where the edge of that platform is. And then we come to this great spur within the outcrop, within the interior, and then a sheer drop down to the blue seas of Pembrokeshire. So it's quite a sort of limited interior of Buckspool, but a very impressive site. One of the big sites we visited, the third site we came to, is Flimston Bay Fromage Fort, one of the sort of big daddy of the Castle Martin range. And here we have a panoramic view from 2018 locating the site. So in the distance, we can see Linney Head Fromage Fort. That's where we started. In the middle distance, we have the Green Bridge of Wales, the Natural Arch, and the Leggig Stacks, great places for nesting birds and climbing as well. And then the Flimston Fromage Fort itself with the cauldron, this great chasm in the interior, which is a dangerous thing to have inside your coastal promontory fort, it must be said. Upper right, we can see Louise's survey from 2009, which has been a really valuable cross-check for how the site is changing. And lower right, one of these chasms within Flimston Promontory Fort. It's absolutely laden with sheer cliff drops and gullies. It's an interesting place to walk around. So let's take a little fly over Flimston Promontory Fort. Beautiful summer evening weather, not a breath of wind over the sea. And we're pulling back over the promontory fort now. You can see dropping down in front of us the cauldron, a Leggig Stacks on our right in the distance. And then we're coming to the interior of the fort with dimples of many house platforms within from the Iron Age, and that curving track which gives access down to a limestone quay, which was used in the 19th and early 20th century. Coming over the cliff collapse on the left there, which I talked about at the start of the talk, and now we can see the proper defences of the promontory fort, this big curving outer defences of the promontory fort, partly damaged by limestone quarrying in recent centuries, but a very, very fine site, very interesting site to walk around and visit. The cauldron within the promontory fort is an interesting feature. It undoubtedly would have formed part of the interior even in Iron Age times. And it would have made horrendous sounds during storms. You'd have this crashing of waves, this echoing noise up it. And one wonders about the role of a great blowhole like this within a prehistoric place of settlement. And I suggest that, this may have had a very important role inside the promontory fort, maybe even a place of ceremony or ritual inside the site. Perhaps even one of the main reasons that Flimston Bay Promontory was enclosed in the Iron Age to come and visit this great feature. Who knows? Were people sacrificed down here? You can't tell, but these are things we must think about. This is a key feature of the interior and very perilous unless you enclosed it with a palisade or a fence at the time. We're able to get these new views looking down into it from a 6-meter photo pole with a GoPro on top. We can really experience peering over the edge of this dangerous chasm. Just down the coast from Flimston Bay is Croxy Dam, another Iron Age promontory fort, but a very different type of site. Now, Croxy Dam is a single rampart enclosing a coastal outcrop with sheer drops just beyond. It's enclosed in a sort of natural amphitheatre, so you can't really see it from anywhere on the approach as you drop down into it. And we know from Fenton that a skeleton was even unearthed here. So it suggests that Croxy Dam is not necessarily a regular day-to-day settlement. It may have other functions to it. It's a very different sort of site. One thing we're thinking about with this type of site now is whether we have a distinct class of augmented coastal outcrops. These outcrops which are treated specially or treated differently around the West Wales coast. You see at the top, Dinas Mawr Coastal Promontory Fort on Strumble Head in North Pembrokeshire. is essentially a large towering outcrop with a minor wall enclosing it. There are a couple of house patterns within. And Diwrnod is very close in appearance to Dinas Promontory Fort on near Land's End in Cornwall. Very similar site. A bit more work's been done at Dinas, and we know that there were Bronze Age burials tucked into rock gullies. There's a rocking stone on the headland there as well, which was a very unusual feature. And many people feel that Dinas is a ceremonial ritual place as well as a regular settlement in the Iron Age. And Croxy Dam on the lower left does also seem to have parallels to Castell Bach and Ceredigion, another promontory fort, which is hidden away, tucked away in a sort of amphitheatre in the coast, very sheltered from all approaches, with a focus of a coastal outcrop. And it may be that we have a distinct class of sites here that weren't regular farms, they weren't defended villages as such, but they're places for people to go to practice ceremonies or carry out rituals. But these are things that we're still developing our thoughts on. I think there's a lot more to discover about the coastal promontory forts of Pembrokeshire from this new work. Return to the survey work that we did. Again, we had perfect weather in our week in August, which is very fortunate. The drone can only really get airborne if we've got winds less than 20 miles an hour. And over the course of a long day between Flimston and Croxy Dam, we surveyed 1.3 kilometres of coast with the drone in a unified new 3D model. And we can see that picture upper left of those individual drone pictures over Flimston promontory there. Nearly 2,000 images that we stitched together in a computer, and that gives us this very, very detailed 3D photogrammetric model, a digital terrain model. And that model is being processed now by my colleague Dan. He's done a lot of hard work on this. And this is now a 2 centimetre accurate model of the whole coastline between Flimston Bay and Croxy Dam, of course down on the lower right. See what a different site it is to Flimston Promontory Fort. Now, previously, the best 3D data that we had for this part of Pembrokeshire was a 2004 airborne laser scanning survey with 2 meters accuracy, very fuzzy, available on the SARE portal there for all to see. But this new drone photogrammetry has given us a fantastically detailed map of these sites. We can start to look at the earthworks in more detail now, start to do more interpretation on the Iron Age sites. But also this is a very important model for future monitoring of cliff erosion, cliff collapse, and the speed and processes of change on these sites. And you can see even individual boulders and rocks on the beach. So it's an incredible way to do surveys. We have that 2009 survey of Flimston Bay, so we're going to go back to that now and start to see if there's any immediate change. We know particularly where that our red circle is. We've lost about 5 meters of cliff line and a bit of rampart in that 2014 collapse. And now we're going to be able to archive this data. And if in 20 years or 30 years or 50 years time, we want to then go back to Flimston Bay to see how it's changed, we'll have this metrically accurate 2 centimetre model. And that's what we're really trying to achieve with the CHERISH project in this part of Wales. While we're doing field work on the South Pembrokeshire coast, we had the opportunity to check out a hunch, a possible new promontory fort that I'd spotted from the air at Crickmile down near Buckspool in 2018. And this is Crickmile Down. It does indeed look like a hidden coastal promontory fort. We have a narrow promontory going out to this high ridge. We have looked at the remains of 2 ditches either side of the isthmus on this promontory with a narrow causeway crossing between those ditches and up onto the interior of Crickmile Down, where we have the footings of at least 1 or 2 potential stone buildings. It looks a lot, the earthworks aren't as well preserved here as we have at places like Buckspool and Flimston. They seem much more eroded, and it may suggest this is an older promontory fort. It may be a later Bronze Age settlement site, 1,000 years older potentially than those at Flimston and Buckspool and Linney. It is a little bit like that very eroded early phase enclosure within Linney Head as well. So we think we have a new promontory fort at Crickmile Down. We're pretty confident about it. But of course, without excavation, it's impossible to really tell and really be sure. While we're investigating Crickmile Down, it's sited on these steep sea cliffs. Looking down on a gully at one side, we noted a very well-built historic limestone wall below the new Fromage Fort. So we scrambled down to have a look at it, did some drone surveys of it. This wall is not exactly a new discovery, it's only potentially 100 years old or so. And it looks to be related to the coastal limestone industry. A lot of lime has been quarried on South Pembrokeshire coast and shipped down to Stepole Quay, the lime kilns there. But this wall is not noted on the county series mapping from the 19th century. There's no historic environment record for it as well at the moment. So it's been missed along the way, but it's incredibly well built. The only thing is, it's at the foot of a steep chasm bordering onto a beach full of massive boulders. So I can't imagine a lot of heavy work going on here, but they must have had some infrastructure here to shift limestone blocks off onto waiting ships. But a really interesting site, just tucked away in one of these little coastal chasms. So we had a very productive week on the Castle Martin training area, making brand new surveys of those important coastal promontory forts and beginning to develop new thoughts, new ideas about how people were living and working and trading on the coast in prehistoric and Roman times. And we're busy in other areas of the CHERISH project as well. We're beginning to get out some of our case study work, our best practice work that we've been developing to show people what we've learned about working in the coast edge. What we've learned from drone surveys, laser scanning and monitoring coastal erosion to some of our most important heritage sites in Wales and Ireland. And we've started contributing as well to big policy documents. We had the Sector Adaptation Plan for Wales published in February 2020. And in there we have some case studies from our work, not only air photographs of caerau Promontory Fort upper right, but also some results of our excavations last year at Dinas Dintley Promontory Fort in North Wales. So the lessons we're learning by working in the coast, we're going to be sharing with the wider heritage community and the wider countryside community in the following year or two. So there's people I'd like to thank. It's a complex business getting permission to work in the coast edge in Pembrokeshire. We have to think about the wildlife. We have to think about the heritage. We have to work with the correct permissions, and particularly in the Castle Martin training area, we're working in a very potentially hazardous environment. It's a live firing range. And so we're very grateful to all our colleagues in Natural Resources Wales, CADU, the National Park and the Defence Infrastructure Organisation as well for helping us get out into the coast edge and do this new survey work. And don't we all wish we had that lovely hot summer sun back again in the depths of winter. So I hope that's been a useful, rapid overview of the work we're doing in South Pembrokeshire. You can look at our website and find out more information, or follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We had our latest issue 6 of our CHERISH newsletter out in August, which you can download as well. And I hope you found that very interesting. Many thanks. Diolch yn fawr.